It looks like 2024 is finally ready to compete with the years that came before. I'm Adam. This is Does It Hold Up Box Office Edition, where we take a look at the top 10 movies over this past weekend, break down the numbers, look at a few other charts, and kind of just talk about how well the box office is holding up. Let's get started, like we usually do, with what were the top 10 movies at the box office this past weekend. And there's some good news, but some bad news as well. Starting off with the good news, Inside Out 2 is the number one movie at the box office for the weekend again. In its second weekend, it far and away surpassed every other movie, making another $101.2 million, only a 34% drop, which is by far the best hold of any movie in 2024. It might be one of the best Pixar holds of all time as well. So far, Inside Out 2, in just 2 weeks, well, 1 full week and 2 weekends, has made $356.4 million. That's absolutely insane. Now, here's the bad news. In second place is Bad Boys Ride or Die in its third week, but it only took in $18.8 million, a 44% drop compared to last week. It's doing all right. It's made $147 million here domestically so far, but when your number one movie is opening up to $101 million, not even opening up, second weekend, another $101 million, but your second place movie only made $18 million, that's a massive gap. Usually you want those numbers to be a little bit tighter, especially since that's the second place movie, meaning nothing else even came remotely close to that. And speaking of what didn't come remotely close, the Bikeriders is in third place, brand new to the list. It took in $9.7 million in its opening weekend. In fourth place in its seventh week is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes with another $3.8 million, a 31% drop, 164.6 so far domestically. That movie's doing all right. It's not a big, huge success like maybe they thought it was going to be, but it's right on par with other Planet of the Apes movies, so they're probably pretty happy with that. Dropping one spot this week to fifth place is the Garfield movie in its fifth week with another $3.7 million, a 21% drop, $85 million overall. It's doing okay. I don't think it's going to hit that $100 million mark, but I might be pleasantly surprised, or not pleasantly surprised, over the coming weeks. In sixth place is If in its sixth week with another $2.7 million, a 25% drop, and it's at $106.5 million. In seventh place is The Exorcism, a brand new horror movie starring Russell Crowe, but I kind of feel like I've already seen this movie. I feel like last year he just starred in an exorcism movie, so I'm not sure where his career is going right now, but it's kind of weird. Exorcist, not The Exorcist, that's a completely different movie. The Exorcism took in just under $2.5 million in its opening weekend. In eighth place is Thelma. It took in $2.3 million in its opening weekend. The Watchers falls all the way to ninth place here in its third week with another $1.9 million, a 46% drop, only $17.7 million overall at the domestic box office. I saw this movie. It wasn't a good movie. This isn't really that surprising. And rounding out the top 10 is another new movie to the list, Right Here, Right Now, a documentary, a music documentary. It took in $1.5 million. It's most likely falling out next week, but hey, you can say it was there for at least one. 4 movies fell out of the top 10 this past weekend. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the re-release, after just 2 weeks. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, maybe the most disappointing movie of the year, falls out of the top 10 after 4 weeks, The Strangers Chapter 1 after 5 weeks, and The Fall Guy, after a slow start, hangs around for a solid 7 weeks before falling out. We have a little more good news when it comes to this past weekend's box office, and it's that we were successful in overtaking 2023 again. Last week, we took in $213 million in 2024 compared to just $163 million. And last year, 2023, saw a huge drop this weekend, the 25th weekend of the year, when it only brought in $109 million. And the number one movie, which wasn't a new release, was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, jumping back into that number one spot after The Flash failed to open big and then completely bombed in its second week. Here in 2024, with that very big hold, that very good hold, and that very great second weekend number, Inside Out 2 leads the way to a total of $153 million. That is now 2 weeks in a row 2024 has surpassed 2023. Is that a sign of good things to come? Well, maybe. What's more interesting is last year, 2023, at this point, the 25th weekend, had made $3 billion, $3,032 million here domestically at the box office. And we were trailing so far behind that for the longest time. But we've kind of closed the gap a little bit. We're at $2.3 billion here in 2024, so just about $700 million away. Yes, that sounds like a lot of money, but just one big hit can get us right back in the game for this year. So that's the good news here, is Inside Out 2 led the way to another victory for the weekend. The bad news at this point is it took in $101 million. The entire box office only took in $153 million. Okay, that means the rest of those movies combined made up only 50% of what Inside Out 2 did by itself. That's not a good sign. But as long as we can have at least one big movie every weekend, there's a good chance for us here in 2024. Speaking of good movies in 2024, let's go ahead and take a look at what are the top 10 current movies for the calendar year. This is all the money made for this movie in 2024, regardless of when it actually came to theaters. We have some big shakeups on the chart this week. In fact, we have a brand new number one movie, and it's Inside Out 2 with that $356.4 million. It moved up 4 spots from 5th place last week. Dune Part 2 falls 1 spot to 2nd place with that $282 million. Godzilla Kong, The New Empire, falls 1 spot to 3rd place with $196.3 million. Kung Fu Panda 4 also falls 1 place into 4th. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes falls into 5th place with $164.6 million. It's definitely not going to catch Kung Fu Panda 4, so it's going to stay right there until something kind of bumps it down a little bit. Bad Boys Ride or Die moves up 1 spot into 6th place with $147 million. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire drops 1 spot to 7th with $113.3 million. If stays in 8th place with that $106.5 million. Bob Marley One Love just continues to defy all odds and hang around in the top 10 for 4 months now, 5 months now. It's insane. With that $96.9 million. Is it going to be there much longer? I don't know. The Fall Guy's in 10th place with just over $90 million. Does it have another 6 in the coming weeks? Maybe, maybe not. But we do have some bigger movies coming along the way as well. So most likely The Fall Guy and One Love are going to get bumped out of there pretty soon. No movies fell out of the top 10 for the year this week. So we're going to go ahead and move on to what we always finish up the show with. And it's our flashback. And because we had a new exorcism movie, The Exorcism, come out this week, it got me thinking about other Exorcist movies, and when you start thinking about those, there's only one movie you actually think about, and it's 1973's The Exorcist. So that's what we're going to flash back to. These numbers were incredibly hard to find, but I did my best to dig as deep as I could to try to get as accurate numbers as possible. And to start out, it's not going to look that good. But this movie played in theaters for over a year, and you're going to see that the numbers finally started catching up. In domestic week 1, the movie only made $1.9 million. The studio kept 60% of that, so they got $1.1 million. Domestic week 2, the movie made about $3.5 million. Studios got to keep just under $2 million of that. And domestic week 3 plus, here's where you see the big numbers. And this includes every release since 1973. It's been re-released a couple of times. Sometimes it didn't make any money, and sometimes it made quite a bit. But total, since it first released in 1973, it has made $225.5 million after those first 2 weeks. The studios kept 50% of that, roughly. I don't know exactly how much percentage they get to keep when you're getting re-release talk and all that kind of stuff. But if they got to keep that 50%, they brought in $112.8 million. Internationally, the movie made $198 million. In its re-releases, it didn't get an international release during its first run, but it has been released there since. Studio kept 40% of that, so it's $79.1 million. No Chinese release, but that's to be expected from such an old movie. The budget for this movie blows my mind. It was $12 million. Yes, that doesn't sound like a lot, but remember we're talking about 1973, and I have to imagine most of that budget was spent on all the effects that they have in that movie, because I just watched that movie again recently, and although it's not as scary as a lot of people tend to have rose-colored glasses for, it still looks really, really good. So $12 million, they did really good work with that. Marketing for the movie was around $6 million at the time. It grossed $428.8 million worldwide. They netted about $195 million off of that, which means the movie had an estimated profit of $176.9, just under $177 million. And this is why they keep making new Exorcist movies, because they're hoping to hit that kind of number once again. All right, that's it for the box office this week. I'm sorry that it was a little bit shorter of a show. It's because I'm getting through this pretty quick. In fact, the number for right here, right now is just the estimate, because I couldn't wait around to get the final number, because as you're watching this, I'm actually out celebrating my birthday. So, sorry we don't have all the accurate numbers, and it was a little bit fast this week, but next week we'll be back to our normal show. Until then, be good to yourself, be kind to others, and as always, keep watching movies.